20 countries, a lot of news, and a lot of sitting on airplanes. We'll say goodbye to 2018 and do some goal setting for next year, right here on The Hot Zone.
This is The Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
It's the last day of 2018, episode 16 of my new show, and I'm so grateful for you, my viewers. Your support has just been amazing. And we may soon have some really great news about the show for next year, but today, let's look back at some highlights of the last year. A couple short items I want to talk about first, though. According to Newsweek, a new migrant caravan of over 15,000 Hondurans and also Guatemalans and Salvadorians is making its way north into Mexico. Now, according to this report, the group isn't planning to go all the way to Tijuana, where there are still thousands of migrants languishing in camps as they wait for an asylum hearing in the U.S. But at least 2 of the migrants in Tijuana have been murdered already, but you're not hearing much about them anymore in the press because they've already served their purpose, which was to try to embarrass the Trump administration. The only ones you're hearing about now are in the media are those that they can make political hay out of, such as the 2 children who have died in Border Patrol custody after being dragged across Mexico by their parents, who plan to use the children to help them enter the United States more quickly. Now, this new caravan apparently plans to cross into Mexico and stay in Chiapas state and look for work. The new Mexican president, they call him AMLO, which stands for Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, has called for the construction of a high-speed rail network to connect some of Mexico's biggest tourist destinations. I guess this mass of humanity from Honduras thinks they'll all get jobs working on the railroad. We'll see how that goes over with the unemployed Mexican laborers in that area, but I guess that remains to be seen. In related news, 4 German nationals were assaulted on December 27th by a group of armed men in Puebla, Mexico. The victims were driving to work when the assailants robbed them, and the attackers reportedly had placed nails and stones along the motorway, causing the commuters to stop their vehicle to investigate. So that's an important note. There are a few rules I always try to follow when I'm driving in a foreign country. I try to be inconspicuous, for one. I try not to drive at night if I can help it. And I have no problem ignoring people who try to get me to stop for whatever reason, whether it's a car broken down by the side of the road or a kid trying to wash my windshield or a pretty girl hitchhiking. Or look, if the traffic might be backed up, I'd rather keep moving however I can, even if it means taking the long way around. And that's not always possible. But keep in mind that thieves will often prey on your nice, polite American manners to take advantage of you. Another tragedy out of Mexico. An 84-year-old Swiss tourist was killed in Acapulco last week, stabbed to death by an unknown assailant in a robbery attempt. His wife was also injured in the attack. Listen, if the Mexican government is unable to get a handle on the violence that's become such a blight on that beautiful country, then AMLO probably shouldn't be putting his resources into building trains. He should be putting it into law enforcement. That's just my opinion. In reality, Mexico is either at war with the cartels or it's controlled by them, and sometimes it's hard to tell which. Now, here's a little look back at my 2018. I meant to get this out on Friday, but ran out of time. So when I went back through and started collecting this footage, I was really amazed at how many places I actually get to in a year. But as my job goes, 2018 wasn't even all that remarkable. This year, I visited about 20 countries and flew only a little over 100,000 air miles. That's partially because I spent more time reporting in the United States this year on stories such as the violence in Baltimore, Chicago, the Austin bomber, and various marches and protests we saw all across our very divided culture. Personally, I'd rather report from the battlefield somewhere than attend another one of those protest marches. They are really starting to get tedious. Anyway, here's 2018 in 2 minutes. This is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in all of Baltimore. There's been a really staggering rise in sexual assaults. And here on the side of the bus stop is Germany's next top model.
See, 50 euros is 6 grams.
churches and monuments like this one. This is the Frauenkirche in Dresden, Germany. You can see the tactical way that they learn to move, and that's because you don't really know who the bad guys are until they're shooting at you. Hey, leave her alone! Leave her alone! Hey! Hey!
Guys, he's with NRTV! Do not interview with him!
NRA TV.
NRA TV! Do not interview with him!
So I'm taking it you don't want to give me an interview?
Absolutely not!
You are, though.
Chuck Holter with NRTV!
Holton. Chuck Holton. Three years ago this week, Kate Steinle was murdered right here on Pier 14 in San Francisco.
Ignore this man!
So are you saying you don't have any interest in a rational discussion on this issue?
No, because you are irrational. I've seen your work.
I'm irrational?
Self-defense, pepper sprays, electroshock, telescopic weapons were sold out.
Everything was sold out. Okay.
We who want serious gun control do it because we love our country.
Why do we need guns on the street that can kill people?
So I just spent a couple hours inside Dachau.
Right now I'm flying over Mexico Beach, and they say it looks like it's been bombed.
It's not $30 million. It's not.
It's the oldest and largest gun store in the entire country of Italy. So this is Lumberton, North Carolina, and the town is flooding already, but I think you need to join the NRA.
Yes,
I will buy you a membership.
No, that's okay. All right. Well.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's Bastille Day here in France, and millions of people across the country are gearing up for huge celebrations.
All right, so this is a little pueblo called Escuintla in Chiapas State.
This is what I truly believe. I think God's just protecting me.
As you pass through the checkpoint and show your passport and you go right through with no problems, it really gives you a sense of just how fortunate we are in the United States to be able to do that.
Looks really exciting when you put it together that way, but what that didn't show you was all the overnight plane rides, stuck in backpacker class and next to some kind of obese mouth breather with a screaming baby. Unfortunately, that happens more often than I'd care to recall. Now, before we go, I want to share with you my choice for the most amazing interview I did this year. And that's a tough choice, too, because I get to meet so many amazing people every year. But this one really stands out. He's a Marine Sergeant, John Peck, and he's an American hero. We're here with Marine Sergeant John Peck, and he has an unbelievable, miraculous story that I want you to hear about. Thanks for being with us, Sergeant Peck. I really appreciate it. You're right now still at Walter Reed, right?
Correct.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your story. Just give me the short version.
Marines for 7 years. Sergeant, of course. Deployed to Iraq in 2007. Suffered a traumatic brain injury. Recovered. Re-enlisted. Went to Afghanistan in 2010. And I was blown up. Lost all four of my limbs. And in 2016, I was put into a surgery for 16 hours to receive somebody else's arms. And that's basically the small part of it.
So is this the first ever double arm transplant? I mean, I've never even heard of such a thing. No. So the stats are so far is I'm the second military person to receive it. There is, I believe, 6 or 8 double arm transplants that have been done throughout the world. I think there's somewhere around 80. Wow. Arm transplants. I don't know if 80 is double or if it's just a singular arm. Still, that is unbelievable that they're able to do that sort of thing. Tell me what it was like when you woke up from that surgery. I was high on meds, a lot of meds. My wife was there, and so my arms had to be kind of elevated at this like nice, sharp 45-degree angle. I couldn't really see my hands too well. All I could see were like these little poofy things, and I was like, they gave me baby hands. They looked like baby hands to me. I was like, they gave me baby hands. They were so tiny.
But then I took a better look at them. I was like, nope, they're not baby hands. They're not bad. I like them. I'm cool with this.
What's it like rehabilitating with new arms? I mean, I can see you can lift them over your head. They're actually surprisingly functional. Just imagining sewing someone else's arms onto your body, it just still blows my mind.
I mean, it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird at first, but for me, it's just, I accept it. It's part of who I am.
Do you have feeling in your arms?
Yeah. So I can feel like right now this tabletop is, it's very slick. I can feel texture and everything like that. I can feel temperature and, I can tell when something's smooth or when something's got like sandpaper kind of thing. As far as therapy, it's from 8 till 11. I'm doing 2 hours of occupational therapy, stuff with my hands. I'm doing an hour of physical therapy, making my body muscles bigger. And then in the afternoon, I got another hour of occupational therapy. And it's roughly about 2 years of recovery.
So you got to meet the president here last week or a week before last. Tell me about that. How'd that go?
So that wasn't really our intent, was to meet the president. The president and Sarah Huckabee Sanders came to Walter Reed maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And, we met up with Sarah and everything. And I told her about the arm transplant, how I had to raise money for it. She's like, let's get on top of this. So our whole purpose for being there was actually to talk to the secretary of the VA, the deputy secretary. And Sarah was just like, hey, I got this press briefing today. Do you guys want to be, come up on stage with me? And me and my buddy, Staff Sergeant Dwyer, we were like, yeah, we're cool. We're cool with that.
Sergeant Peck suffered a traumatic brain injury in Iraq during his first tour of duty. Then, after 2 years of therapy, he re-enlisted and deployed to Afghanistan. While there, he stepped on an IED and lost both arms and legs. He spent 2 years at Walter Reed and in 2016 received a double arm transplant. He is now doing physical and occupational therapy at Walter Reed and doing incredibly well.
It was great though.
Okay, but then, so you just threw something in there that you're going to have to explain. You had to raise money for this. How did that? What happened?
So I didn't have to raise money for the surgery. I have to make that clear. The surgery was actually covered by a FDA or DOD grant. Because otherwise the surgery was like roughly $350,000. I had to raise money for the travel expenses. So for instance, my wife and I were going up there March 18th to the 25th. That trip alone, just for the hotel and a rental vehicle, is about $4,000.
Okay, so why doesn't the military cover this? Is what I want to.
And that's why we wanted to talk to the Secretary of VA, is because unfortunately, the arm transplant is considered experimental by the FDA because there's not enough data information on it to say, hey, yeah, you're going to come through and these arms are going to work. And so, which means the government won't help. TRICARE, our insurance won't help. VA won't help. And it's kind of like you either have to raise the money or you have to take out a huge loan or you have to live with your prosthetics and just get used to it. And to me, that wasn't enough. I wanted to try to do this. And
so I went ahead. How did you do it?
A lot of begging and pleading. No. So when I was tested in 2014 for the arm transplant, as soon as I got approved in February, I started selling shirts. I started asking people just for donations, just because. And apparently my story kind of like pulled at people's heartstrings because I was able to raise roughly around $425,000 or something. So I'm good. Like I don't have to worry about paying these added expenses that I thought I was going to have to pay. And then just all that money raised goes just to the arm transplant. It goes nothing else.
Well, it just goes to show that Americans are a good-hearted and very charitable people. When they know that there's a need, they like to fill it. And Americans can do a much better job at that than the government can. And I think your story is a case in point. Sergeant John Peck, you're an inspiration. It's really amazing to talk to you, and I appreciate your service to our great country. I appreciate the hard work you're doing now to come back and be an inspiration to so many people. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, looking back is fun, but looking forward is even better. What's your habit when it comes to goal setting for the new year? Let me share mine really quickly. I write out 7 important facets of my life: spiritual, relational, physical, financial, academic, business, and social. Then I sort of rate how I feel I did this year in each of those areas. I track things like my giving, the number of books I read, how many days I spent away from my family, etc. Then I set a goal in each area for the coming year. What gets measured gets managed. So if you want to be better at the end of the year than you were at the beginning, it's important to keep track of these kind of things and make plans to improve. Bettering yourself is all about execution. What I mean is that everyone knows what they ought to do, but actually getting yourself to do it is the key. So to get better at execution, I try to find ways to embrace hardship and discomfort throughout the year. Like, for example, taking cold showers or reading a novel in Spanish. Look, life is hard enough, and I'm not a masochist, but I realize I can keep my mind tough by choosing to do hard things on a regular basis. So when the real hardship comes, I'll be strong enough to persevere. Maybe I'll do an extra video about how I set goals and share it on the Hot Zone patrons page on Facebook. If you'd like to get access to all our bonus content and get to correspond with me personally in the coming year, go subscribe on Patreon. It's patreon.com/hotzone. It's only $36 a year, and you'll get a signed copy of one of my books as well as all of our bonus content and even more. This coming year, I'm going to do more than just make the news. With your help, we're going to make the news good for a lot of people. I hope you'll join me. I'm Chuck Holton, and I want to wish you all a very happy new year, and may God's purpose be clear for your life in 2019. Thanks for watching The Hot Zone.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.